Kenyatta College, which basically means I direct our learning center, all of the support services that are in the learning center, like tutoring, like our GEM programs, like our peer mentoring, all of these support programs that are designed to help you be more successful in your class. So happy to have you be a part of Colts-CON. We're really excited that you're able to join us today. And so you'll see at the bottom of this slide, later today, the only way you all are sitting at home, and I can't really see who you are because your video is muted, but if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have anything you'd like to share, I'm going to be asking you in a few minutes to share some information with me. Put it in our chat Q&A. We're going to do kind of a test run because that's how you and I communicate together. Since your video's not on, I can't see if you have a reaction, oh, if you really like something or if you're laughing. So you and I are going to learn to talk with each other via chat. Gonzalo, if you can go move to the next slide. So many of you might not know this, but we are recording the session. You might ask, why are we recording it? Well, in the likelihood that you might want to revisit this information, you may want to share this information with someone else, or we just want to keep record of the things that we talk about today. Why? Because it's beneficial to students. Everything that we're going to be sharing is in your benefit to help you to be a stronger student, a better student, a more prepared student. That's our goal for today. Along with meeting some amazing faculty and them sharing their experiences with you, we want you to get this information that you need, because my focus is that you are ready for class on day one. That's what I want to do today. That's what I'm going to be asking the faculty is, what are the strategies that you can use to help you to be a stronger student and to be ready for class when it starts? So when you have questions, you're going to be using the Q&A. Everyone, can you see the Q&A? Can you see that box on your screen? Let's do a test right now. If you see the Q&A, put your first name in there so I know who's joining me today. And I don't think they have chat, so Q&A is the only way. So I don't see any Q&A in there right now. Add some information so that we know who's here. Thank you so much. I see them coming in. Thank you, students, for participating with us. So that's how you and I are going to communicate. If you have a question for me, for any of the faculty, for any of the Colts-CON folks, that's how you will communicate with us. I'm going to look right now to see how many first name people I have. All right, I see some good ones. Thank you, Kimberly. Georgianne's joining us today, woohoo! And Yolanda, we have some of our peer mentors also joining us. So thank you so much for doing that. I only have 14, so we're short. Come on, we want you to get going with that. Okay, so thanks again, everyone. So this is how this is gonna work. I'm gonna start off asking our faculty questions. If there's additional questions that you'd like asked, put them in the chat. Candace and Gonzalo are going to be monitoring the questions for us. So be sure that thank you, everybody. We're up to 19. We're missing about 10 students. Let's go. Let's get those names in. And then if you have anything that you would like for us to ask, we're only here an hour together, but we'll get to it as much as we can. We're still at 19. I'll need those names in there. Thank you, students, for participating with us. Okay, so start off, faculty, welcome. Thank you for being with us today, faculty. If you can start off, I'm gonna start with Professor Shankar, Sumati Shankar. If you could share kind of your name, what it is you teach, how long you've been at Kenyatta College, just to start off so that they know who you are, what you teach, and then how long you've been here. And we'll start off with Sumati. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sumati Shankar, and I teach math in Kenyatta College. I've been here for the past 4 years. I teach both calculus and statistics. And I find Kenyatta students to be very special. They are really nice, and it's always fun talking to them. They are willing to share stories, and it's always a pleasure interacting with students. And I look forward to that, and I'm ready for fall.
All right, thank you. And if I could go next to Gampy, I'm just going to go in order as I see faces on my screen.
Sure. Hi, I'm Gampi Shankar. I teach business. I've been at Kenyatta College. This is going to be my second year. I've been teaching for a long time, but I come from the industry and I come from the technology and business side of things. And that's where I spent much of my career. Teaching has always been a passion. And I was looking for a place where I could actually continue teaching in a smaller teaching environment, and Kenyatta is the perfect place for that. And I see many familiar names already on the Q&A here. As some of you have been in my classes before. I teach
Right.
business information systems, business introduction to business, introduction to management. And I really look forward to seeing many of you in the upcoming fall session.
Okay, Professor Nas, you could add to that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Noss. I'm the head of the Digital Art and Animation program here at Kenyatta. I've been at the campus for 10 years full-time, 12 years total.
Wow.
And it's the longest I've ever been anywhere, frankly. Prior to that, I spent about 20 years in industry as an animator, an artist, art director. So I've done a lot of different things. Our program is digital art and animation, and we cover a lot of ground. We do digital imaging, we do user interface, user experience, video game design, animation, digital illustration. There's any of the digital arts that you're interested in are the kind of things that we teach. And I'm a lot like Professor Gampi in that I spent a lot of time in industry and wanted to find a way to take my experience and help those who wanted to do what I did professionally get to where they wanted to be. And taught elsewhere, but Kenyatta is my home, and I'm enjoying it quite a lot, even during these difficult times. So thank you for coming, and I hope to see some of you in class.
Thank you, Professor Nas and Professor Eck.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dave Eck. I teach philosophy here. Been here for 5 years.
Do you really, David? No, just joking.
I study philosophy with my students. Most of my best mentors in life were teachers that I've had who were very generous with their time. So as a result, I'm indebted to my debt to them. I'm very generous with my time to my students. So please do reach out. I know it's not as the same for all teachers, but whether it's the chat about a course, when you can make a strong connection to a teacher, it can really help you develop into a well-rounded person. As a philosophy teacher, really the focus for us is learning how to learn. And so much of what I've learned, all the most important stuff that I've learned from other people. And that's why it's so important to make different connections in professional settings and school settings. So be that courageous person to introduce yourself, reach out. The worst that can happen is you get silence, and then you should move on and try to find someone else. So thank you all for coming, and happy to be here.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. So I'd like to start off, for a lot of our students, for a lot of our staff, for a lot of our community, being transitioned to being completely online was sort of a shock to our systems. Students who are new to college or new to Kenyatta College may not know that we were basically all given just a few days to transition ourselves to be prepared to teach. And from my perspective, to be prepared to teach and support students in this online platform. So that was sort of a shock to our systems. So I'd like to ask our esteemed faculty, what was that transition like for you all? And were there any surprises as we moved to this online platform? And did things come up that you didn't necessarily expect? And then if they did, how did you address those? Let's start with Gampi, if you could start there to answer that question.
Sure. I must say that just like for our students, it was quite sudden. It was quite dramatic to go from seeing students in class interacting with my students to suddenly seeing them on a screen. So it was quite a bit of a challenge. And the hardest part for me personally as a professor was reshaping the rest of my semester in mid-flow to get away from things where there was a lot of interaction, not only between the students and me, but amongst the students. One of the biggest things that students benefit from is the peer interactions. And part of it, I think, was the hardest thing. Although we couldn't see it in class, I knew that was affecting how students were interacting with each other. In terms of, how I changed things. One of the things that as we get to know the tools better, one of the things that we could do is adapt and recreate similar situations in the online environment. A very simple example for those of you that know Zoom or have used it before is to have a lot of groups working in breakout rooms. A very simple concept, but something that we can create that's something along the lines of what's in class. So to me, the biggest takeaway is I've got to find parallels. I've got to find ways to do that. But here's the biggest one that I did personally for my students to engage them and increase that sticky value that, in-person affords us. I call it my plus or minus 30 minutes. And what I do is every class, before class and after class, I hang out on Zoom. Literally, I just hang out there. And that's my patented formula for saying this is open space, this is white space for us. Just like we would have had in class, before class, after class, I'm going to stay there. And that to me worked pretty well, I would say. So I'll stop talking there, but hopefully that kind of gives and paints a picture of how things changed after this online switchover.
Gampy, did you start that right away, or was that something you developed as we moved into the semester, further into the semester?
I think, in a way, on the online environment, it was a parallel to what I was doing in class, Deva. And I think, I was trying to replicate as much of the interactions as possible. And that was natural for me in a way to say, let's try and do this, because that's what my students were expecting in the real in-person interactions. So
Okay.
I think a continuation, but I had to find a way to do it online.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay,
Sure.
Professor Haas. How about you? What was the transition to teaching online? You probably have been doing that, but were there any surprises as the whole college transitioned online? Just for you, Paul.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Yeah, I have been teaching online classes, not entirely, but a few, since I started at Kenyatta full time. So the online environment wasn't unknown or unusual to me. The transition was making sure that there was enough support material in the form of videos that I recorded. I made the decision right away because back in March, none of us knew what we were doing, not only on campus, but just in life, and that's students, that's faculty, that's administration. We're all kind of trying to figure it out on the fly. So I made the decision to allow my students to work asynchronously. I didn't continue to hold class during class time because who knew what their work schedules were going to be like, what their family demands were going to be. So I wanted to provide as much flexibility as possible to my students. But what that meant for me is that I had to record lecture videos. Lectures that I would normally deliver in class, I had to have video available for, so that students could watch it at their convenience. I scheduled office hours literally every weekday for 2 hours in the afternoon. So if students had questions or they wanted, they just wanted to chat, they could come by. And I prompted them repeatedly throughout the remainder of the semesters, hey, remember these hours are available for you. I love Gampy's idea about, being there a half hour ahead and a half hour behind. I'm probably going to steal that idea
All
for
right.
for the fall semester,
I
because
don't
in the
think it's
fall,
proprietary, so that's good.
well, he said it out loud, so
Oh,
um,
is it then?
um, the fall semester, I'm actually going back to synchronous instruction. And the reason for that is because um, some of the classes I'm teaching are introductory classes, which means that I haven't met these students before. And, in the spring, we'd established a relationship between ourselves. And, we knew where everybody was coming from. That's not the case in the fall. So I want to make sure that we make those connections. So we'll be doing synchronous stuff. I'll still have lecture videos that are available for asynchronous watching, and support materials, tutorials from the web, and those sorts of things. But the important thing for us as faculty is to stay connected to the students, whatever form that takes, whether it's, hanging out for a half hour after class, whether it's having a daily office hours on Zoom, whether it's, sending frequent messages, both to the class and to individuals who may not be responding as much as you'd like to see. Those are the kind of things that really came into play last semester, and will continue into the fall.
Thank you, Professor Nas. So I'm going to get to David and Sumati, but before I do, I kind of want to poll the students. Students, when you're in a class, what do you think is the best way for faculty to reach out to you? Is it by email? Is it through a text? Is it through a Zoom meeting? Let me hear from the students and our participants. What do you think is the best way to keep those relationships with students? And then David and Sumati, if you could be thinking about the transition, what the transition was like for you, and did you have any surprises? So students, let us know the best way to reach out to you. How would you prefer for us to contact you? Would you prefer an email? I don't see any in the Q&A. So let's inform that. Oh, email, I see it coming. Thank you so much for your responses. Email. So we're getting a lot of email responses and through an app, through a call or an email. Thank you, students. We appreciate that. Okay. So David, let's go with you, and then Sumati would follow up that question. What was the transition like for you? And were there any surprises? Were there any lessons learned as we navigated this process?
I think one lesson for me, Dave, here, it just is a reminder of how powerful habits are, and how they empower us, and they also limit us. Right, when we're thrown out of our normal habits beginning in February, March, one positive as a teacher of philosophy, many of my students were much more open to contemplating some bigger questions. So in ethics, for example, we talk about a lot of general crises like environmental ethics. And in our daily lives, it can be hard to take those issues seriously. But when we're thrown out so dramatically of our daily lives, we have an opportunity to think about just big picture type questions. And for me as a teacher during that transition, my number one goal is trying to get students to find some semblance of a habit and expectation about how the course would progress. So a lot of balancing of how much to message students, making sure that expectations are reasonable. So that was kind of my trying to help students find a new habit despite the exceptional circumstances. And here we are still navigating these types of issues.
And thank you so much, David, for sharing that, because I think that's part of why this transition has been uncomfortable, because we are used to our habits. And I see we have a raised hand, Humberto. John, I don't know, can he talk, or how does that work?
Yeah, I can bring him up to talk.
Humberto, you have a question?
Make sure to unmute yourself, Humberto.
No, I listen you.
Okay, that was an accident. All right. Okay. Thank you. You're just participating. Okay, Sumati, if we can go to you next. You're muted too. Thank you.
So in March, when we suddenly went online, it was as much a shock to me as it was to my students, I guess. And
That's what students, they don't know that part.
since I'm being a math teacher, and I think this is true for any teacher, we try to read our students' faces, to say, well, that quizzical look. Okay, let's go over this part again. So that was missing when we went online and we started working with Zoom. It was harder, and I understand that some of the students had situations in their in their homes where they couldn't have the screen, have the video on. So we were trying to work these out, and I tried to spend as much time with them, calling out the names and asking them if they had any questions. So sometimes it was interesting when they would stay after the class and talk, or if they would send me, they didn't want to ask questions in front of the class, so they would just send me a quiet chat.
Yeah.
So that was the more common way that many of my students responded. One thing I noticed with my classes was some students who were very silent otherwise actually did very well in this format. They really did extremely well. They were comfortable with being on the video or asking questions. So it gave me a whole new perspective of what everyone was going through. And that was my biggest takeaway, that there were a lot of pleasant surprises.
Yeah, I think for all of us and students, they wouldn't be aware of this, and maybe all the faculty, everybody looks put together. But when we all transitioned online, all of us were like, what? We have to what? So from our perspective, and we know that, everything looks like, oh, it's so perfect. I do want to add a note. Professor Nas asked me to share with you all. Students, we see that you would like to use email. A lot of you responded that that was the best way to contact you. Make sure that you're using your school email accounts. It's really important that you do one of two things, that either you link your personal account to your student account, or you use your student account, because that's where, when we try to contact you from the back end, if you have a private email, we don't have it. So the only way that you can be contacted through the school is by your school email. So make sure you become familiar with that. Get to know your student ID number. Those are all things you shouldn't even, it's like your driver's license. Your student ID number is something that you have to know and use. You should have access to your WebSmart, to your Canvas shell, to your email account. All of those things are really important, particularly in being successful in a college environment. So it may be a little bit different than some of you may have experienced from high school. Okay, faculty, thank you so much for sharing that, who you are, what your surprises were. Now let's talk about the students a little bit. So one of the things I really want is for students to feel like they have a chance to prepare and be successful in their class. So from faculty, we've gone through kind of a half semester of this. We're moving into the fall. Do you have any best practices that you've observed from transitioning from the summer and the spring that you could recommend to students? And this one, if you could respond, if you have one, just let me know, raise your hand. If you don't have, I don't want you to feel pressure to answer it, but What have you observed from your students that have really helped them to be successful in the class, in some of the classes you are teaching? Does anyone have an answer for that? No? Okay. Sumati, you can share with us.
One of the things that I noticed with the students who were really successful was they would be on time to the meetings. And sometimes they would come earlier to ask questions. They were not afraid to ask questions. And if you, the one thing that I noticed was if they were not comfortable asking the question in front of the whole class, they can just send a private, they can send a private question on the chat, or they could email. So sometimes I got emails right there while I was teaching, and I would answer that question without actually addressing the person or putting them on the spot. So that was something I thought a student should be aware of, that they should contact and be and not be afraid to ask questions.
Okay, so I want to talk to the students for a minute. So one of the things I like to stress is that students, you're listening to tips that you can hold on to, but listen to that tip. The Professor Shankar just shared with us that the thing that you can do to be successful in the class, just to start off, is show up on time. These are things that are within your grasp. And Professor Nas, same thing for you, please.
The thing that I noticed the most, and again, you know, I went asynchronous, so in order to be flexible with people as much as possible. Going into the fall, though, I mean, except for online classes, to my knowledge, except for online classes, every class was listed as a day and a time and a location in the schedule. The biggest problem I had with students at the end of last semester was, and it's understandable, but because of the circumstances, they let things slide. And, you know, then they ran up against the last week or two of the semester, and they've got a big pile of assignments that need to be completed. And now they start panicking because they don't have enough time to get everything done. Going into the fall, what I would strongly recommend is if you signed up for a class that had a day and a time that was listed as the meeting time, even though we're online, treat that time as your class time. Use that time of the day and the week to check in with the class, to, you know, find out what assignments you have, to interface with the instructor. Treat it like you were coming to campus, because that way you're going to be, you carved out that time. It doesn't get infiltrated by a bunch of other stuff that we all have to do. But that time is sectioned out for you to do the coursework that you need to do in order to be successful. It's easier in classes like mine, where they're going to be synchronous and lectures are going to be happening during that time, but there are going to be classes where they're asynchronous and you don't have to show up at a particular time. Still treat that class like it's meeting at that time and use that time to do the coursework.
Thank you, Professor Nas. David or Gampi, anything you want to add to that? Okay, come on, Gampi.
I was just going to add to what Paul said. That makes perfect sense. It's simple, and it's something that you should all follow in terms of setting that time aside. As we all like to say very often, it's not about attendance. An A is not for an attendance in class. We are looking for participation. So many of us as professors prefer not to have you just go back and review the recorded version of a Zoom session. That does not work well. We have in-class participatory activities, we have group activities, we have things we do in class. So being engaged is really critical from a learning perspective. And I would highly encourage you to set aside that time and be there in class and participate. And a simple thing here for participation and being active is to turn up your Zoom video feed. It seems so fundamentally simple. And, you know, as both from your perspective and my perspective, putting the name to the face, connecting, one of the simplest things you can do from your side, a practical tip, is don't ever miss the chance to show up in class like you do in person, but activate that video feed. And I'll stop.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was actually going to ask that question. A lot of times students want to go to things in anonymity. And in this environment, I think as much as we can make things personal, and I'm guilty of it, I'm not going to even pretend that I don't, but I think as much as you can present yourself. And I think from a faculty perspective, you want to know that students are engaged. David, did you want to answer that question at all? Any lessons, any best practices?
Just briefly, for those of you who don't have a private bedroom, really try to be creative about creating some space for you where you can work, whether that's working in a car. Don't worry about looking weird. These are weird times, or dressing up in your own home to try to put yourself in that mindset of, now I'm doing schoolwork, or putting on huge headphones so the people you live with are less likely to talk to you. Really try to be creative in creating some space and time where you can just focus as much as possible, so that when you stop doing that, you can actually move on to other parts of your life.
Thank you so much, David. So here's something I'd like to kind of talk about a little bit is you all, and students in particular, you may not know that you have supports available to you that are absolutely free. You have supports like tutoring, you have supports like peer mentoring. One of the things, and I know we are going to have opportunities, students, for you to ask questions. Thank you, Candace, for the reminder. We are going to have opportunities for students, so start thinking about your questions now, because in about 5 minutes, you're going to have an opportunity to share those questions with me and with the faculty. How should students working from home incorporate these academic supports that are available, like tutoring, like peer mentoring, like retention? How should they be using those services? When should they be using those services? And at what point in the semester, what are those indicators that, oops, I might need a little bit more help here in navigating this class? And let's start with, if I could start with Paul, if you could start this one, and then, but I'd like everyone to sort of be thinking about how students should use it and when is the best time for them to access these services and actually take advantage of them.
I personally, I think you should use them whenever you feel the need. You know, these services are there for you, and they're there for your success. Everybody that works on this campus, well, we're not working on the campus right now, but everybody that is at Kenyatta is invested in your success. And I know that sounds cheesy and, you know, markety and all that stuff, but it's true. You know, you get everybody on that campus wants you to succeed. And we like nothing better than hearing that you do. And we love seeing your performance in class, and, you know, kind of grasping all the concepts and techniques that we're telling you. Yeah, don't wait until you feel like, you know, you're barely keeping your head above water to access services, whether it's, you know, tutoring or the Learning Center or whatever it happens to be. And in normal times in my studios, we have student assistants that are advanced students that that can help out during lab time. So, you know, they can answer questions, they can help you over rough spots. It's all there for you to use. And the whole point, nobody who's on campus wants to see you fail. Everybody wants to see you succeed, and we're all more than willing to do whatever it takes to help you get there. So these services are there for you, and don't hesitate to use them. I know it's fairly generic, but that's really how I feel about it.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, if I could go with David.
I guess one thing that might not be obvious that I would share is think about tutoring in a broader sense of helping with motivation for philosophy, as well as for every type of course you can take. It's so important to be able to understand how the meaning of what you're talking about in the class actually relates to your life. And going to those sorts of tutoring opportunities gives you an opportunity to talk about it with someone, and make that concrete. So in general, the more connected you are to other people, and the more likely you are to see the relevance of this stuff to your own life, and the more likely you are to succeed.
Thank you so much. Sumati and then Gampi.
I would say, I would tell students to start looking at tutoring and other services right from the beginning of the semester. That way they can be really comfortable when they need the help. And also they will find which tutors they are more comfortable with, and who are the other students that show up around the same time. These are things that always worked for students working in the STEM center, who would go in and do their homework in the STEM center when we were on campus. Now that is not possible, but you can still find someone from the class. If you come to, since the classes are, many of the classes are synchronous, you can try finding a friend within the class, form a study group or a study buddy, and try to go for tutoring at the same time. And that might actually give you an incentive, an added incentive, not just for finding help, but also the feeling of being connected to the class and the course. So
And
that's something that I
wanted to talk about that because everyone's working from home. First of all, students, now is the time for you to ask your questions. Click on that Q&A box, put your questions there. We'll start addressing those. But thank you, Professor Shankar, for that. I really appreciate that. Gampi, did you get to answer that question?
No, I can just very quickly, I'll add a couple things to what's been said already. There's quite a few services that you may or may not know about. Go to these virtual SMCCD resource sites that you have. Go to your student portal, for instance, and you'll see a list of services. For example, as an example, I have my students do a paper, and one of the things they need to do is online research. Just because you don't have physical access to the library doesn't mean that you can't schedule a librarian's time online and actually consult with them to develop your paper. So library counseling, that's another one. It's a critical aspect of your planning and organizing, not just for this semester, but for future semesters too. So think about using the counselors' times and get on their calendars. It's a treasure trove of information that you can get from them as you plan your courses.
Also, along with that, students, I'm going to let you know that if you go to the library, you can schedule, they still give you orientations, all of those things, but also the Learning Center, from the website, we have a live Zoom chat that's open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single day. So Miriam has a question, so we'll go with that question. But if you go to the website, you can click it. There's a person sitting there waiting for you to come and ask them questions. So you don't have to just send an email, but you can speak to a live person. So Miriam said, how can I get a book from the library at the college? Does anyone want to address that? Basically, if you go to the library, the website, or you can email them. They also have a chat function where you can let them know if you'd like to borrow a book. And for intents and purposes, you can also order books from the bookstore, and they're mailing books. I just had a meeting with the bookstore manager yesterday, and he said that they are mailing books to students if you need them. But if you need a library book, by all means, contact the library so that they can get the materials to you. Okay, does anyone have a more intimate answer to be able to address that for students? Paul?
So I know that Kenyatta College's library is part of the San Mateo County library system. And what the library system is doing right now, and I did this just yesterday, if you put a hold, you have to have a library account, so you have to have a library card. But if you put a hold on a book, you request the book and put a hold on it, then what the library will do is schedule a time for you to come, or they will let you know the book is available, and then you schedule a time to go pick it up. And at least at the Redwood City Library, the way that they're doing it is you schedule a time, you pull in the parking lot, you call them and tell them you're there, they come and they put it in your car's trunk, and off you go. Or you can do walk up as well. They have a walk up option as well.
Well, that's cool.
So I assume that because Kenyatta is part of that library system, they're doing something very similar. It might take a little bit of research to find that out, but at least that's how the county is handling it. And I know Kenyatta's library is part of that system.
Yeah, I think that, I'm not sure they're still doing the book lending part, but I know they are still part of the larger system. I think they started some new library platform. I'm not exactly sure if there's the same relationship. But the first place you should look is go to the library website. If you can't get answers from the website, call them or email them so that someone can answer your question. I know they still have the chat function going on. Probably when fall classes start, they'll have that available. Okay, so students, I'm gonna sit for a minute. I know the faculty and I can keep talking, but I wanna make sure that we get your questions answered. If you have a question for our faculty panel about so you all could be more successful, any questions that you have about first day, I'm gonna be asking the faculty to get an answer ready for how students can be most prepared at the start of the fall semester. But students, I'm giving you an opportunity right now. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box. And also any staff or mentors, if you have any questions for our faculty panel. So let me ask the faculty one question that they can answer quickly while we're waiting for students to get their questions loaded. How do you all stay motivated? We made this quick transition. People are working from home. Sometimes you're looking at a computer and you're not really interacting with people. How do you keep, like, you're feeling like you're not isolated and you're not by yourself, but what keeps you motivated in the course of a semester? Let me start with Sumati.
One thing that keeps me motivated is thinking of how much, as faculty, we are having trouble. I keep thinking about how much it is compounded for my students. While teaching, I found some of my students one of my students had 3 or 4 nephews that she was taking care of while she was attending class. So when I think about all the trouble that students were going through, I felt like my problems were very small compared to what they were going through. And that kept me motivated to wanting to do something more and being there. So that's what kept me going. It kept me encouraged that they were trying, not giving up.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Gampi, to you.
I would just add to that, absolutely. I think that's along the same lines. And 3 specific instances this past semester. I had a student who had to go back to Madrid, Spain. I had one student who had to go back to Kobe in Japan. And I had another one going back to Istanbul in Turkey. Wow. They all 3 completed their courses.
Wow.
Have that level of motivation. There's absolutely no reason for us to do anything less than that.
That's amazing. Students, are you, I mean, the gravity of having to go to a whole nother country and still complete a course. That's
absolutely.
Really Paul?
For me, I love what I do. I love the field that I worked in for so long, and I love helping people get to where they want to go. It's the other thing, frankly, that motivates me is the students. We've been fortunate to have our students have tremendous success in the industry, and even as students. I'm going to brag a little bit, if that's okay, because I don't know if everybody's heard this. We have an organization that comes to campus every year, Campus Movie Fest, and every student on campus can sign up to make a 5-minute movie. and then there's campus competitions. They go on to national competitions. Last month, two of the students in the animation program that made films for Campus Movie Fest were nominated as the best film nationwide. We're the only community college that participates in this. Every other college is a four-year school.
Wow.
Of the 5 nominees in animation, 2 of them were from Kenyatta, and one of the teams won. So they literally bested. They won over who knows how many, dozens of colleges and hundreds of films, but they took the prize. And it's that kind of, the work that the students are engaging in, their enthusiasm for the subject. We're a very specific discipline. Not everybody who ever comes to campus comes into our program. So the students that are there, we already kind of have an advantage because they really want to learn this stuff. So it's relatively easy to stay motivated, and especially, those other things are just kind of icing on the cake, but it really is satisfying to see the kind of success that our students are having.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. That's really great news. David, we had a question, and you're going to address that question right now.
Yeah, I see Kimberly asked when are teachers going to send emails to know what you need for the first day of classes? And this varies by teacher.
Great
The
question.
simplest answer is no later than the first day of class. Personally, I like to send out an email about 2 weeks before the class starts, just about any required materials like books. So I'll be sending out emails this weekend, and then I follow up with the syllabus generally the weekend before the class starts. But that sort of thing does vary by faculty. At the latest, first day of class.
Yes, thank you. Any different answer from the faculty for that question? When should students expect communication from faculty? I know that's also a big one, and some of you are transitioning from high school, so it may be a little bit different. In this environment, you're going to hear directly from the faculty about and also Canvas is another way that faculty can communicate with you. But any other faculty, would you like to respond differently or add anything to that response from David? Paul?
I think David nailed it. It does depend on faculty. This is my own personal approach is once August rolls around, I get busy and I start loading up the Canvas shells and contacting students, but I know that's not true of everybody. First day of class might be the first time you hear. The good news there, though, is that if an instructor is telling you the first day of class what you need for the class, I sincerely doubt any of our faculty are going to expect you to have it the next day. It's, they're providing you with a list of things, especially in this environment. So it really does vary. The only thing I would add is if you hear from faculty and they tell you, you need to do X, Y, and Z, like I mentioned before, take that as a task and do it right away. And then it's off your plate. The biggest issue I see students having is delaying stuff for whatever reason. There's legitimate reasons. There's reasons like me, I get lazy. But the more you take off your plate as it arrives, the easier it's going to be for you. The more things pile up, the harder it's going to be. So make sure that you're addressing things as soon as you possibly can after you're aware of them, and it'll be a much easier semester for you.
Yep. Thank you, Paul. Gampy?
I follow pretty much David and Paul's approach. I send an email 2 weeks before, and I open my Canvas a week before the semester starts.
You guys are so great.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. I'm always late. Sumati, anything to add to that?
I generally do this about a week before because the textbook is available for students from day one. It's with inclusive access. They get access to everything on Canvas. So all they need is, since it is a math class, they definitely need to have a notebook and some writing material. And a good laptop with strong internet connection is what we are expecting everyone to have at the moment for Zoom. So
Can we talk
that's about
about that point? Thank you for bringing that up, Sumati. We only have a few minutes left to this. I'm sure Candace is probably going to be sending me a reminder soon. Speaking of that, thank you, Paul. You're going to address this question from Araceli. But before I get to that, sometimes connectivity and having technology is an issue. As faculty, what do you recommend that students can do if they're having trouble either finding ways to connect via the internet or they're missing technology? What are your recommendations there? And can we make that brief? I really want Paul to be able to get to the next question. So let's start with, Gampy, can you start with that one?
Yeah, I've been directing, again, obviously that's a critical aspect, and I've been directing students to the campus resources. College actually gives you loaners for Chromebooks, and there's a website that you should be able to find on virtual smccd.edu or virtual.smccd.edu. That's a practical place to start with, both for the access and for the hotspots, the Wi-Fi hotspots that the college is giving. So maybe that's the starting point, I would say. But I lean on the college for backing us in terms of supporting our students there.
Which is, we should be leaning on the college, and students, if this is an issue that you're having, you should also lean on the college. Find out what resources are available to you. We all want you. One of the things I'd like to stress here, because we have about 5 minutes to answer this next question from Araceli, is even though it's online and you're working from home, you are still enrolled in a program that will allow you to transfer. You can still graduate. All of those things are still happening. It may not feel the same because you're not physically on campus, but believe me, the work you'll be doing, you're still doing college level work. You're going to be able to transfer. You're going to be able to graduate. Those things are still going to happen even though you're working from home. So don't give up on those dreams that you have about transferring and elevating your academic success. So we can do that with us. Paul, you were going to address Ara's question. So if you can speak to that, and then other faculty, if you want to add to that, please feel free to do so.
Sure. Ara's question was, when you were students, which class was the hardest or you didn't like, and which class was the most enjoyable and liked the best? It's for me personally, and I apologize, Samathi, math. There's a hole in my brain where math information goes. But it varies for everybody. I mean, some people love it. I love what I do, and some people go, oh my God, I couldn't possibly do that. You can, but that's a whole other discussion. You're always going to have classes. You're going to have a mix of classes, some that you absolutely love and some that you're not enjoying as much. So rather than, I could give you a list, but that's not going to help anybody. What I can give you is a recommendation, and that is there's a tendency sometimes to focus on things like core courses. If you're going for an associate degree or you're doing an associate for transfer, there's a tendency to want to focus on the things you need to have, like English and math and science and whatnot. My recommendation for you is to take a couple of those classes and then take a class or two that you're going to enjoy. Take one of our fashion design classes. Take one of Gampy's business classes if you think you might be interested in business. Whatever you think your career goal might be, take a class or two in that, as well as the things that you absolutely have to have. For any degree, there are courses you have to take. And if you mix those together, at least when I went to college, and I went to CSM, I made the mistake of taking all of my English, math, et cetera. And I did that for 2 years, and it felt like I was getting nowhere. And when I finally started taking my major courses, that's when I started really enjoying the college experience. So don't be me. Take a couple of courses that you enjoy along with the things that you need to take. It's not going to take you any longer to get to where you want to be, but it's going to make the pathway much more enjoyable.
That sounds like such great advice. We have one question left from Lucila, and David is going to answer that one. And then we'll wrap all this up. David, we have about a minute to address this question, and then we'll close things out.
I'll do my super fast voice. So Lucilla's question, if the new normal learning lasts for a long time, are we going to be different types of students? And I would kind of modify that question a little bit. It's true that maybe we're completely online in the spring, but one way to think about it is think of it as an opportunity to practice. You're more likely to be interviewed through Zoom or some online medium. And if you can get comfortable in that sort of forum in your classes, whether it's philosophy, business, design, you're much more likely to feel comfortable when you're interviewing for a job that you want. So things are changing, school, work, and think of one way to think about school is it's an opportunity to pick up skills that aren't directly covered or listed on the syllabus that can be very helpful in other parts of your life.
So I do want to close. Thank you so much, faculty. Students, can you join me in giving our faculty a round of applause? And I'm giving you all high fives across the board, virtual high fives. I so appreciate you joining us for this faculty panel. And then reminder that you'll also be joining us later this afternoon for the interest area section of this. But I'd like to encourage students to stay invested in your education. And I read a quote that has always stuck with me. The brain, once it learns something new, never goes back to its original place. So everything that you learn is growing you as a person. And so William asked a question, what is needed to be a good student? As we close, thank you so much for joining us. So William, we'll get to some of those questions we didn't get to address. And we'll try to address those later, but really, I think you heard it from our faculty. What you need to be a good student, show up. All of our faculty mentioned something like that. Faculty, thank you once again for joining us. Participate, be an active participant in your education. You all, your expertise was marvelous. Thank you so much for joining us. And now I'm gonna turn this over. I believe Candace is gonna take over and share with you what the rest of the day will look like. Thanks again, faculty. We really enjoyed having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Candace, are you next or is it Gonzalo? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it can be me. Give me 1 second.
Okay. And faculty, the students said thank you for all of your advice. We greatly appreciate it.
Okay, Gonzalo, would you mind stopping your share? And I will share my screen. All right, everyone. My name is Candace Johnson. I am the Program Services Coordinator for the Bridge to Opportunities and STEM Peer Mentorship Programs. And I am also a Colts-CON, on the Colts-CON planning team. So I just wanted to show you what the rest of the day looks like. So if you, to get to this, you came on to Canvas and you clicked today's beautiful little button. You probably watched the video of Gonzalo introducing the day. So we've just completed the faculty panel. So right now we have a break from 11 to 12. So please stretch, walk around, get some food and all that stuff. And then next we're gonna go, you have some options. And at this time, if you are a first year student, if this is your first semester at Kenyatta, we are in a transition moment. So you may be going to completion options or you can go to transfer opportunities. We will let you know in the announcements. So please keep Canvas up so that you can check for the announcements. And if you are interested in STEM, you can learn about transfer pathways through the STEM. And of course, all of these buttons are clickable. And then from at 1 p.m., you can join us for mindfulness. So you can have an opportunity to to get some breathing exercises and learn about different techniques for mindfulness, which is really important all the time, but especially now that we're in this wild situation where everything is online. And then you will have a break from 1:30 to 2. And then you will be rejoining one of our faculty to learn about different interest area presentations. So these links underneath, so as you can see, there's no hand on this one, so this one isn't clickable, but you will click one of these. So if you want to learn more about biology, math, digital art, business, or philosophy, please choose which one you would like to go to. So that's from 2 to 3. And then you'll have another break from 3 to 3:15, and then we will finish up our cultural wealth activity that we started yesterday. If this is your first day today, please keep the Canvas up. We will put the links to the first activity so that you can be prepared to work on this activity with the whole group.
Great, thank you, Candace. So,
Yeah, so I think we're done.
okay, everyone, we'll see you at the next session. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we'll see you later this afternoon.